So, hello, welcome back to another episode of Self-Development Tactics podcast. Today we're talking again as yesterday, the same thing as yesterday, because I was only able to cover, I think, 30 minutes, and this whole YouTube video is 2 hours and 48. So we're gonna go ahead with probably another, 10 minutes for today or something. Depends on how good the information is, or how, well, it's always good, but how useful I think it is. Because I don't know, I mean, a lot of scientific terms, a lot of scientific stuff, processes might not be that useful for the majority of people listening to this and or watching this. But therefore, let me show you. We are going ahead with Dr. Nolan Williams, Psychedelics and Neurostimulation for Brain Rewiring, by Andrew Huberman, or with Andrew Huberman, and uploaded by the Huberman Lab podcast number 93, if you're interested or if relevant. And I do really want to check this one out. Belief/identity rules, so quote-unquote rules, rescripting, TMS, and talk therapy. I'm expecting something pretty good to happen there, yeah. I expect something pretty cool to learn here and see here. I haven't gone through kind of the rest of it. Maybe this one also sounds really interesting. Anyway.
From what you told us about the Stroop task and the role of the prefrontal athletic, etc., and they'll give you a year's supply of vitamin D3 K2. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Huberman to get the 5 free travel packs and the year's supply of vitamin D3 K2. Based on what you told us about the Stroop task and the role of the prefrontal cortex in Stroop task, to me, the Stroop task is a rule switching game.
Yep.
You're saying in one moment, the rule is you read whatever the word says, and then you switch and then you say the rule now is you tell me what color the word is written in, and you suppress whatever it is the word says.
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
Okay, a rule in some sense is a transiently adopted belief system.
Yep.
So I could imagine that in depression, which has all sorts of backstory to it, that of course the psychiatrist or psychologist or friend can pull on that thread. Like, for instance, somebody might believe that they are bad. Yep. Or that they don't deserve love. I'm trying to bring this into the typical language that people talk about. Or that absolutely. They will never succeed.
Yep.
Or that even if they keep succeeding, it's just going to get harder and harder and it will never feel good. These are sort of rules like the Stroop task.
Yep, that's right.
At some level. They're rules that are more pervasive over time, unfortunately. But I could imagine that if the PFC is also contains some sort of maps or algorithms related to rules of emotionality or self-representation, or things that we've heard. I think there must be data out there that's saying that, whatever we heard in middle school when someone made fun of us, we can remember that. Because I can remember things that people said about a jacket I wore one day or something in the 4th grade. Crazy. I didn't even like the jacket. Now I think it was kind of cool. But anyway, the point being that we have an intense memory for these things that set up a sort of rule or a question, like maybe I don't really know how to dress. For instance, maybe that's why I always wear the same black shirt. But in all seriousness, it seems like the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is in this amazing position to access rules, which are beliefs, and beliefs are rules, and then for moments or longer to switch those rules.
Yep.
And so for somebody who's depressed, to just simply look themselves in the mirror and say, you are great, you are fantastic, it feels like a lie if you feel like garbage to say that. It doesn't fit with the rule. It's like saying, that card is not red. That card is green when your eyes tell you that it's...
And this is quite the case for, I would argue those, what do you call them? Mantras, yes. I don't really believe, I think there is some data on that. And I do remember that there was once a person on also the Huberman Lab podcast, and this person stated that yes, mantras do work, and saying shit like I am the best over and over and over again, that at some point you're going to believe in it, and therefore it does work. But I think one has to differentiate between maybe what can be the case and what is a lie. I will never have, unless I dye them, yellow hair or orange hair or blue hair or whatever. I can try to make myself believe that I'm already having blue hair, but it is A, never gonna happen, and B, and I think deep down, I know that this is never gonna happen, so I don't necessarily think that it is possible. Therefore, if this is the same with mantras, I do kind of have a feeling, but I still believe and I still think that, for example, when I'm listening to certain types of music, I think it does change one, or it does change me. I mean, when I'm always listening to sad, melancholic music, it might do something to me, which I, by the way, do quite often. But, and also the opposite. So listening to a lot of happy music might also work kind of the opposite way, like just making me happier, making me feel better, making me more motivated or whatever. Might also just depend on taste of music. But still, I do have a very very black and white relationship with mantras, I would say.
It's red.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
And it seems like there's something about prefrontal cortex that in principle gives flexibility to rules based on what we know about the Stroop task. So given its connectivity, can we assume that the talk therapy that occurs in the psychiatrist's office or with a friend or through journaling out something, because we do know that reporting things about trauma or difficult circumstances or the rules that we contain and tend to hide inside of us about how we feel miserable about ourselves or anything, really, that in re-scripting that somehow it allows us to do a sort of Stroop task on our beliefs. Is that a tremendous leap? I'm just really trying to frame this in the context of what I and most people think of as depression.
Yeah, totally.
Because the network components are vitally important, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like, what are the algorithms that govern prefrontal cortex?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a kind of standard cognitive behavioral therapy session, right? What the therapist is trying to do is identify those beliefs and kind of determine how fixed they are, if they're flexible, as you're saying, and then help folks to find another explanation for them and to kind of reintegrate that potential other explanation into their memory system, right? Where I think TMS is really interesting, actually. We had a lot of patients who've told me, like, my therapist told me that I wasn't trying hard enough in therapy, and I really am trying hard, but these are moderate to pretty severe depressed patients. And as soon as we get them well with the TMS approaches, kind of rapid, 5-day approach, and the next week we come in and see them, and they'll say, what I did all weekend is I looked at my therapy books and now I can understand it. And so, I actually see TMS as a way of having kind of exogenous sorts of cognitive functions that in milder forms of depression, we can pull off with psychotherapy. This idea of being able to kind of turn that prefrontal cortex on and have it govern these deeper regions. In depression, the deeper regions govern the prefrontal cortex. They precede the prefrontal cortex timing-wise. And we've got some data in review now where we're seeing that in depressed individuals that are responsive to our rapid TMS approach, what we call Stanford Accelerated Intelligent Neuromodulation Therapy, or S&T or SAINT, if you look at the brain before people get this, they will have a temporal delay where the cingulate is in front of the DLPFC. And in people that are normal, healthy controls, no depression, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is temporally in front of the anterior cingulate. With effective treatment, we can flip the timing of things so the dorsolateral is in front of the anterior cingulate, just like in a normal person.
So you're not talking about obviously physically moving these structures. You're talking about in time, their activation. So in one case, it's like the coach telling the player what to do, and in the other case, like the player telling the coach what to do, and you restore order to the game.
You restore order to the game, and what it looks like is depression. To your point, is a bunch of kind of spontaneous content that's semi-volitional, that's being kind of generated out of this conflict detection system, the cingulate that seems to sense conflict and kind of feed that information, gets overactive in depression, and then in depression, it looks like the left dorsolateral does not sufficiently clamp down on it. And what therapy appears to do is to kind of restore that. What we see with TMS over that region is that we just exogenously do the same sort of thing. We restore the governance of the left dorsolateral over the cingulate area, and that is correlated with treatment improvement. So the degree in which you can re-regulate in time the left dorsolateral over the cingulate, the more of an antidepressant effect you have.
Can we therefore say in crude terms that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex really is the governor of how we interpret physiological signals and spontaneous thoughts?
It places a lens that the rest of the brain sees things through. And you can do these experiments where you can put a normal healthy control person in the scanner, and you can make them feel like they have a loss of control, and then you can see that region come offline, right? So you can experimentally manipulate the system. And so kind of buffing it up, it's like almost, TMS is almost like exercise for the brain, right? You're kind of exercising this region over and over again with a physiologically relevant signal and kind of turning that system on. And what's interesting, I think really interesting for this show is to, we had a couple of folks, probably 5 or 6 folks that have actually told me this, where if they remit early enough in the week, we have this very dense stimulation approach where we can stimulate people really rapidly over a 5-day block. We don't discriminate when they get better to when they stop. So if they get better on day 1, we still give them the other 4 days because it's in the protocol to do that. And we're getting to a point where we can tell how long it's going to take, but we're not there yet. And so, every time somebody gets better at day 1 or 2, at the beginning when we first started doing this, we'd say, we're not sure, we think this is safe to keep going, but, what do you want to do? And everybody was like, no, I want to keep going. And so, by Wednesday, they're like totally zeroed out on the depression scales, even better than most people walking around, like really no anxiety, no depression or anything. By Thursday, the first guy that told me this, he came in and he said, I was driving back to my hotel and I decided to go to the beach, and I just sat there and I was totally present in the present moment for an hour. And he's like, I read about this in my mindfulness books, but I experienced it last night and I've never experienced anything like this before. And I was like, that's interesting, but kind of wasn't sure. And then I didn't tell obviously any more patients about that. And then about 5 over the last couple of years, when they remit early in the week, by the end of the week, they're like going to the beach and they're like totally having what people describe as a pretty mindful, present moment sort of experience, which is really interesting, what that is. I mean, I don't have full-on scientific data to tell you, but it's an interesting anecdote, right? That folks, when you push them through this point of feeling kind of clinically well, that some people end up reporting this additional set of features. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the cingulate and the...
What I also find quite interesting and, also I think important to mention, important to talk about, the fact that knowing about those mechanisms, knowing about how it works and basically what it is, the definition of depression, for example, I think it is important and relevant. And I think to some degree it can really help to, first of all, just understand, what is going on. Also maybe understanding how one could deal with it in some or the other way. But only to some degree. I think, yes, understanding and seeing it, first of all, makes one able to do something about it. But just because I clearly know how a certain thing works, doesn't mean I can also deal with it, change it, work on it, whatever. I mean, I can also know how to throw a basketball, theoretically. But when I do not do it, first of all, and second of all, when I, do not try it physically, I'll probably never be able to do it properly. Like, theoretically I know it, but I probably then can't throw one at least not, in the right direction, right height, so that I make 2 points. Maybe 3. I don't know. But yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna end the episode there. I really do hope that I've been able, or Andrew's been able, to spot some light on certain ideas, certain really relevant and important ideas. And or Nolan Williams, once again, Dr. Nolan Williams, Psychedelics and Neurostimulation for Brain Rewiring, from the Huberman Lab podcast number 93. And yeah, with that being said, bye-bye.